Back everyone to the channel, and today we have had an historic poll, a poll that has not been seen for 100 years. And the poll, which comes from Find Out Now pollster, is showing for the first time Reform UK beating both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. So this poll has Reform on 26%, the Tories on 23%, and Labour, the ruling party in government, now down to as low as 22%. Now, what's really interesting with this poll, what's different than previous polls that has had Reform UK in second place and one that even had them joint first with Labour, that has had them trailing miles and miles behind because of the first past the post system when it comes to MP seats. But this poll, shockingly, has now made an equal three-way split. So it has Labour just slightly ahead with 179. Reform UK now in second place. Now remember, this is with MP seats, not percentage vote, at 170, only 9 behind. And the Tories on 165, only 5 less than Reform. And this is the first time we've seen a poll accurately or nearly accurately look something like proportional representation, where the popular vote is near enough matching the amount of MPs. So let's take a look at this poll compared to the general election just over 6 months ago. So the Labour Party have lost 11% of the vote. But with that 11% of vote they've lost, they've gone from 411 MPs to, if there was an election held today, all the way down to 179 MPs. And that is what happens when you win a big majority, which with such a low percentage of the vote. Reform UK would get an extra 165 MPs, because obviously they only got the 5 at the general election with 14% of the vote. So with an extra 12% of the vote, Reform UK would more than 20 times increase its MPs. And finally, like I said, is starting to look more like a fair system. The Tories, who got 25% of the vote and 120 MPs, would increase theirs by 45. But there's one other thing where this poll is very, very different than the other polls. So what we've tended to see, and I'm gonna call the Conservatives right and Labour left, although you couldn't really say the Conservatives, there's much about them at present, which is right wing. But when it comes to voters, what we usually see is the percentages between Labour and the Lib Dems and the Conservatives and Reform is very similar. But the share of MPs has never been big enough to form a majority for Reform and the Conservatives. But let's just say that a pact was made. For the first time, those two parties would have an overall majority in government of 335 MPs, round 20 more than you need on a majority. And Labour, the Lib Dems, the Green, the SNP, and everybody else combined still wouldn't have as many MPs as on the right. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that the Reform UK party should do a merger with the Tories. If Reform carry on this projection, in 4 years' time, it's getting obvious that Nigel Farage could possibly be the PM without any help at all. And why is that? It's because people are seeing the Labour Party now for the Communist Party it is. Now, by communists, I don't mean that as a cheap dig, but that is on the side of the political spectrum Keir Starmer and his party are on. We're seeing it with trying to take your freedoms away, what you can say on social media, what conversations you can have outside a pub. They believe that having these rules and this big nanny state keeps everybody safe, but what they do is take your rights away. So when people are realising this and how much they're crashing the economy and not looking after our old age pensioners, thousands of millionaires leaving the country, not to mention the farmers, they're looking for an alternative. But what's great for Reform UK is with only 6 months we're off from 14 years of chaotic government under the Tories. And that is why we're seeing a massive, massive change. So the question I'd like to ask you today is, if this is the result in 4 years' time, would you rather see a left-wing coalition or Reform UK joining with the Conservatives to form the next government? And I think what is safe to say, and this has always been the hardest part for smaller parties to win well at general elections, is the argument that if you vote for them, you let the other one of the big two in. And that in the past, to be fair, has been a true argument. But that now is dead in the water because Reform UK's vote is now coming off Labour more than what it is currently off the Tories, and now is equaling out in overall vote share from the Tories, from Labour, and 20% of the vote is coming from people who didn't even vote in the last general election. Now, obviously, 4 years is a very, very long time off, and lots of things can change. Now, the only concern I would have with Reform UK, and this isn't anything Reform UK can change at all, and I will still 100% be voting for him because let's be honest, we've give the other two parties plenty of chances. They're controlled by the same people. They're both part of the mainstream media establishment that we have in this country. But where it will be challenging for Reform UK, where it's different than, let's say, the United States, is that we run on a parliamentary system. So Reform UK, Nigel Farage, will find that they may well go from having 5 MPs to over 300 MPs overnight. And that will be probably the majority of those by some former Conservative MPs, people who have no experience in government. And that is going to be very challenging to start with for Reform UK. But like I said, we need massive change. And I'm going to predict now, after this result, like I said a couple of weeks ago, it was only a matter of time to Reform top to poll. However, I didn't think that Reform UK would be equal on MP seats already. That is just fascinating. But I'm going to predict that over the next 2 years, you are going to see lots and lots of defections. First of all, by former MPs like a Jason Rees-Mogg, and then following people, current Tory MPs like Suella Braverman. So it may look, coming into the next general election, that the Reform UK party could be on around 40, 50 MPs and already setting up to take control of government. Because when you're the official opposition and you have a shadow cabinet, what that shadow cabinet is doing is learning the rules, getting ready for when one day it takes government. But there is one other problem, and that is the more to the right wing people in our nation are getting upset with Nigel Farage. And there are times, I must admit, when you do wish Nigel Farage wouldn't say certain things. But what I'll say to those people on the right is we are on the brink of something so historical for this country. It is unimaginable. It was certainly unimaginable 6 months ago when Labour got the whopping majority of 411 MPs. And Nigel Farage may not be perfect to your ideology, and he's certainly not going to be perfect to the middle of the road voters that are going to vote for him. But Nigel Farage is by far the best option we have to get this country back and get something that resembles the once great nation that there was. Thank you everyone for watching. Can I please ask you to like, share, and definitely subscribe so we can get these videos out to as many people as possible. And I'll see you on the next video.